This is the second time the wheel of homily has pointed this gospel to me. And as a divorced Catholic, I'm happy to have it. There is some cultural background that needs to be given in order to better understand what Jesus is saying in this gospel. First, in his culture, husbands were divorcing their wives for arbitrary reasons. He might not like her habit of talking too much or too little, might not like the way she cooked or the way she managed their children. Divorce was an easy out for a husband who did not want to deal anymore. As we can well imagine, this behavior put women at serious economic risk. Most women were likely left with few options. Of course, there was always the one option most of them were forced to use. But where Jesus really turns society upside down is when he empowers women with the right to divorce their husbands. Jewish law did not permit women to enter into contracts. Consequently, a wife could not divorce her husband, no matter how abusive or how unfaithful he was. Only the husband could end the marriage for whatever unfounded reason he chose. She, on the other hand, was stuck there. This gospel presents a somewhat confusing message because first, Jesus empowers wives equally with husbands by infusing them with an authority their society does not give them. Then he jettisons the Mosaic law and refers to what is written in Genesis. The message is a dilemma, kind of a backdoor way of equalizing marriage by equalizing both the offense of adultery and the option of divorce. What I hear is Jesus telling husbands and wives, but particularly in his culture, husbands, to take their vows seriously and practice the hardcore commitment that marriage requires. But the real takeaway, at least for me in this gospel, is seeing Jesus once again level the playing field for the underdog, in this case, women, by making marriage essentially a partnership of equals. This was unheard of. It was also typical of the radical justice that was so much a part of his ministry. On a personal note, I want to say that when I was going through my divorce, I received a tremendous amount of support from the Catholic Church. I joined the support group for separated and divorced Catholics and faithfully attended their meetings and conferences and even went on one retreat. What I learned from this support was both extremely comforting and helpful. It was reassuring to be with people who were experiencing the same level of trauma. The information provided in meetings was very helpful and included everything from how to choose the right lawyer to maintaining your sanity and your humor during a time of tremendous personal upheaval. I leaned on my Catholicism and it did not let me down. It provided. The second part of the gospel talks about Jesus, the children, and the disciples running interference between them. While children were highly prized in that society, providing the future for Yahweh to move forward, they in themselves were not so highly prized. They really didn't become useful, didn't begin to serve their purpose until they were old enough to make a difference. Who would bother with a child? Who would take the time with a child? Weren't there other people, other things that were far more important? Here again, Jesus flips the situation around and tells people in so many words that they need to nurture their inner spiritual child. They, and that would include us, need to practice childlike trust, joy, optimism, and on the heavier side, the childlike openness and humbleness that is not ashamed to show fear, vulnerability, and hurt. The child who laughs his head off and cries his eyes out. Someone once said that when we look at our adult children, we still see the 5-year-old on the swing. Why would it be any different for a God Jesus has told us repeatedly loves us like only the perfect parent can love us? To our Father and Mother God, we all look like the 5-year-old on the swing. One small moment in time will stay with me for the rest of my days. My daughters went to Catholic school. One afternoon, when I picked them up at the bus stop, my 5-year-old daughter, who was in kindergarten at the time, got in the car and said, in a very excited tone of voice, "Mommy, do you know Jesus was never too tired for children?" That's our gospel this morning, circling back around 2,000 years later. I want to end this homily with a shout out to my favorite Christian, Francis of Assisi. The Christian world honors him tomorrow. It is truly remarkable that someone who lived approximately 1,000 years after the life of Christ lived his life as though he walked with the man. It is truly remarkable that approximately 1,000 years after Francis lived, he still continues to influence Christianity to the great extent that he does. If there was ever a Christian who kept his spiritual inner child well nurtured, it would have to be Francis. He saw God in every good thing, connected God to every good thing, and loved God with a childlike joy that was contagious. Francis lived in highly contentious times, yet he was a consummate and relentless seeker of peace. He inspires me to be a better steward of the earth and a greater protector of the animals God has entrusted to our care. Most important of all, he inspires me to live life with a glass half full attitude. Indeed, with his childlike trust in divine providence, there is simply no other way to go. In fact, for Francis, the glass is never half full. It's completely full, and it's completely full all the time. I think he will want us to remember that great hope, that great optimism, and live it. In the spirit of Francis, may we all strive to become the trusting, joyful, hopeful, vulnerable children Jesus asks us to find, to rediscover in our gospel this morning.